The Compact with Africa conference, which promotes private investment by G20 countries in Africa, was held this week in Germany. The event follows the marking of the 30th anniversary of the Berlin Wall collapse and the end of the Cold War. Africa 54's Paul Ndiho reports.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel hosted the leaders of 12 African countries in Berlin Tuesday for discussions on boosting investment and trade in Africa. Merkel announced that incentives will be created for companies that decided to invest in Africa.
We believe, and I am deeply convinced about this, that more transparency can encourage more investment in these countries, because for investors from G20 countries, such as German medium-sized companies, it is very, very important that there is trust and that there is transparency, so that it's clear where one is investing and under what conditions.
Germany already has reform partnerships with a number of African nations, including Ghana, Tunisia, and Ivory Coast, Senegal, and Ethiopia. Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo talks about the African product being sold on the international market.
We've now made the conscious decision that we're moving away from a situation whereby we're just exporters and producers of raw materials to ramping up the value chain in our own countries.
Germany put Africa and inclusive growth high on the G20 agenda when it held the rotating president in 2017. The European nation addressed the root causes of mass migration from underdeveloped to developed countries. Rwandan President Paul Kagame says that Africa is ready for business.
Really showcasing how Africa is ripe for business, for investment, and how far we can go. For example, the partnership we have had, Rwanda has had with Volkswagen, Siemens now coming in, and SAP demonstrates the competitiveness of the economies of our continent.
Meanwhile, German Chancellor Angela Merkel recently led a series of commemorations to mark the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, which divided the city during the Cold War. The wall was built by communist East Germany to prevent its citizens from fleeing to more freedom in the West. On November 9, 1989, East Germany border guards, overwhelmed by large crowds, threw open the gates to West Berlin, allowing free passage for the first time since the Berlin Wall was built. The momentous event led to Germany reunification a year later and soon the collapse of the Soviet Union. In Africa, the fall of the Berlin Wall ushered in new hopes of freedom and challenges. In South Africa, the long and hard and apartheid struggle had been gaining momentum nationally and globally, and in 1994, the country became the last African nation to be freed from white rule. According to many historians, the second decade after the Cold War led to democratic progress and setbacks within and among African countries. And even though the number of authoritarian leaders in Africa has declined, there are still some who seized power during the Cold War era and continue to maintain that power. In December 2018, US President Donald Trump unveiled a new US strategy for Africa to combat what was characterized as the predatory practices of China and Russia and their growing influence on the continent. In October, the first Russia-Africa summit was held at the Black Sea resort of Sochi. It opened a new chapter in relations between Moscow and Africa. Russian President Vladimir Putin hosted the African leaders at the conference aimed at boosting economic ties with Africa. Paul Ndiho, VOA News.